The movie opens with a character known as the Interviewer, a journalist who has fallen from grace. She was publicly humiliated for publishing a story without adequately verifying her sources. Following this incident, she retreats to her parents' luxurious home in the Adelaide Hills countryside to work on a new podcast about unsolved mysteries. She encourages her listeners to share their stories by calling in. Her boss, Tyler, frequently contacts her, hoping to help her revive her career. Her friend, Scoot, also sends her voice messages, checking on her well-being. As she navigates her way back into her profession, an intriguing lead lands in her email inbox. The email, with the subject line, "The Truth Will Out," contains a brief message and photo about a woman named Flora King who has mysteriously come into possession of a black brick. The anonymous email sender only provides Flora May's phone number. The interviewer contacts Flora May, introducing herself as a journalist from the podcast Beyond Believable and informing Flora May that their conversation is being recorded for the podcast. She then asks Flora May about her background and her connection to the black brick. Upon hearing the term black brick, Flora May's tone changes as it brings back a sorrowful history. After some initial hesitation, Flora May shares her story. She found the brick 20 years ago while working as a house cleaner and babysitter for a wealthy family. The family was kind to her and her daughter Paula, even enrolling Paula in a good school. Flora May and Paula were grateful for the family's kindness. However, a mysterious incident occurred one day. When Flora May arrived at the house, she found deep, terrible scratches on the furniture, as if someone had angrily slashed the table with a sharp knife. The family believed that Paula was responsible. Despite Paula's vehement denials, the family remained convinced of her guilt. Under pressure, Flora May began to doubt her daughter, but Paula never confessed, even after 20 years. The family turned against them over the damaged furniture. Flora May regretted not supporting her daughter and blamed herself. It was around this time that she received the mysterious black brick. She described it as unlike anything she had ever seen before. When asked where she got the brick, Flora May said she received it but did not disclose from whom or where. She emphasized that the black brick was special and that it made her feel a change within her. However, she didn't have the brick for long. The family's daughter found it and gave it to her father. The father, recognizing its value, sold it to an art collector to cover the cost of the damaged furniture. Shortly after, the family dismissed Flora May. When the interviewer asked if Flora May knew the buyer, she learned it was a German art collector named Lang. The interviewer immediately looked up the company and obtained his contact information. Meanwhile, Paula, thinking the call was from a telemarketer, came to Flora May and hung up the phone. After the call, the interviewer took a break. She was alone in her parents' large house as they were away on a trip. She soon attempted to contact the German art collector mentioned by Flora May. The interviewer is connected directly to Mr. Lang, who seems excited to discuss the black brick. She informs him that their conversation is being recorded, to which he agrees. She then asks if he still has the brick he bought from the family. Surprisingly, he reveals that he has several such bricks, all peculiar and identical in nature. Intrigued, she asks how he acquired his brick. Mr. Lang explains that he found it at his house. He describes the brick as the size of a gold bar, but darker than any other object. He's unsure if it's man-made. He further shares that he has used a new technology called volumetric scanning to create a three-dimensional image of the brick's interior. The scans reveal hundreds of interwoven symbols inside the brick. Each set of bricks has its own unique set of symbols. He can't determine if the symbols belong to any known language. When she asks if he can send her the scans, he promises to look into it. He personally feels that the symbols remind him of a scar he had as a boy. He wonders if the black brick is communicating with him directly. He also shares a vivid dreamlike vision he had one night before receiving the brick. In this vision, a grotesque creature appears in his bathroom. Despite its horrific appearance, Mr. Lang recognizes the creature as his brother, a distorted version of him. His brother was a teenager when he died of a heart condition. The creature, standing next to the bathtub, reveals to him his lifelong resentment and envy towards his brother and his secret relief at his brother's death. After this vision, he received the black brick. She asks if he's sure it wasn't just his imagination, and Mr. Lang confirms that it felt too real to be a hallucination. He also mentions that holding the brick always gives him the feeling that someone or something is trying to communicate with him. She questions if he suspects it to be of alien origin, and he theorizes it could be. Before ending the call, she asks if he knew that the black brick he bought 20 years ago from a family was taken without permission from Flora May. Upon hearing this, Mr. Lang becomes uncomfortable as he could potentially face legal consequences. He abruptly ends the call, but she thanks him for his help. Later that day, she calls her friend to update him on the progress of the case. However, Scott advises her to focus on resting and not try too hard to change her reputation. She insists on finding the best story, but Scoot tells her she needs to take a break. Shortly after, she goes back to editing the audio from the interviews and prepares them for the podcast. She uploads them with a message asking for any listeners who may know about the black brick, Flora May, or Paula. The next morning, she received many messages from people claiming they had also encountered the black brick. They all share a disturbing story similar to Mr. Lang's, but none of them know the family or Flora May. This convinces her that each person is receiving their own version of the black brick. It's happening everywhere, and the people she interviewed all claim to have gotten sick and seen a vision of their darkest past before receiving the black brick. One woman shares her encounter with the black brick. She was in her office when she saw the visions. The office was empty and she felt spooked. She heard the wind blowing, even though all the windows were closed. She had a strong urge to escape the wind and silence by jumping out of the window, but the visions stopped and she woke up from her dreamlike state. Her colleague later told her she was walking around as if nothing was wrong. This shows that the visions are hallucinations only visible to the person experiencing them. The woman stopped eating after the sickness came, and shortly after, she received the black brick. When asked about the details of her brick, she felt uncomfortable and hung up. The interviewer realizes there is something hidden about the information she's been receiving. No one wants to talk about how they first found the brick. This makes her curious, but she continues her investigation to solve the mystery. The woman receives a picture of a brick, sparking her interest. She places it in her window and connects it to Flora May's case. Throughout the day, she listens to interviews repeatedly. Surprisingly, a man calls and warns her to stop discussing the black brick on her podcast due to its disease-spreading nature. He shares a story about his grandfather's haunted experience with the brick. Intrigued, she wants to investigate the story on her podcast. The man warns her about the danger, but she dismisses it. She researches mass psychogenic outbreaks and mass hallucinations. She finds an article by Shiloh who has written about similar phenomena. She emails Shiloh. Later, she receives scanned images of the black brick from Mr. Lang. Excitedly, she calls Scott for his opinion on the symbols. He says they belong to a different alphabet. She mentions the UK government's involvement and waits to contact an anonymous article writer for more information. While in the shower, the doorbell rings, but no one is there. She finds a box with a flash drive. It contains a video of her younger self mentioning the black brick as the best gift. Shocked, she calls her journalist father and asks about the gift's origins. She finds shredded paper in the box, which turns out to be a clue. The shredded paper matches one of Dr. Lang's scans. Worried, she calls Mr. Lang to confront him. He denies playing mind games and promises to show her the black bricks. During their video call, Mr. Lang senses a terrifying presence and the call glitches. He mentions his brother before the line goes dead. She edits and uploads the audio recording of their call to the podcast. Meanwhile, she falls asleep at her desk and receives a call from Shiloh in the morning. Shiloh offers help and mentions her paper on the UK government investigating people who received anonymous objects and fell ill. She warns the podcaster to be cautious when sharing information with the public in this situation. Shortly after, we see the main character struggling to eat and becoming weaker. She's smoking excessively and feels unsupported by Scoot. Consumed by the mystery, she looks at the email that started it all and discovers the phrase "the truth will out" from a Shakespeare play. She finds a book with the words "property of FK" and realizes that FK stands for Flora May. She is horrified to realize that Flora May's story is her own. The interviewer is the daughter of Flora May's former employers. She calls Flora May to confront her, but Flora May denies everything. She's also shocked to find out that the interviewer is the one accusing her. Their argument is interrupted by Paula, who tries to end the call. The interviewer doesn't stop, but continues to accuse Paula and Flora May, asking them why they would do this after 20 years. Paula is very angry and upset with the interviewer and tells her that she's the real victim of this story because she's been blamed for something she didn't do. It turns out that Paula never scratched the furniture. She also reveals that as soon as the family paid for Paula's school, their biological daughter, the interviewer, became envious and hateful towards her. The interviewer doesn't remember any of this because they were too young, but Paula never forgot. Later, the interviewer calls her dad again and asks him about what happened on her birthday and the black brick she found as a kid. He tells her she found it on her birthday and that Florme doesn't own the brick. She didn't know how much it was worth on the market, so he took it from her. The interviewer also tells him that she might be the one who destroyed the furniture and lied about it. She's terrified of the possibility, but admits it because her memory of it is blurry. Her father refuses to believe this and dismisses her. After hanging up, she checks the dining table she's sitting next to and sees the scratches. To her horror, she finds that they're there, and they're carved with the same symbol that's on the inside of the brick. She compares it with Florme's brick scan and finds it to be the same, suggesting that she was the one who scratched the table, and Paula was innocent all along. In the upcoming scenes, we witness her becoming increasingly frail and experiencing pain in her right side. Surprised, she rushes to the restroom to vomit, only to discover that it's not food that's causing her discomfort, but a black brick. She manages to cough it up and vomit it out completely. She sits there for a moment, staring at it, before eventually smashing it with a hammer. After destroying it, she moves to the living room, but is startled by a crunching and groaning noise coming from the bathroom. As she goes to investigate, she is stunned to see another version of herself materializing seemingly out of thin air. She grabs a tape recorder to document this bizarre occurrence, but is soon confronted by her doppelganger. She remains calm and attempts to communicate with her duplicate, but to no avail. The new version of her is furious and smashes the tape recorder. Fearing for her safety, she flees the house and takes refuge in a forest. She hides in a tree, but her duplicate, who emerged from the brick, finds her in the forest and confronts her. She insists that they are identical and pleads for her life. She represents the physical embodiment of an alien race that sends out these black bricks. The brick appears to be a sort of vessel capable of transporting an alien, or perhaps a seed that grows inside a person, copying their memories and DNA until it becomes an exact replica of them. In any case, the original woman attacks her duplicate and manages to strangle her to death. She then fills her pockets with heavy stones and drowns her in a lake. The film concludes with the woman returning to her house and her podcast audience resolve to reveal the truth and share her story, asking only to be heard.